In the heart of St. Louis, Missouri, stood one of General Motors' proudest factories. It was the 1950s, the golden age of the American automobile. Here, Chevrolet cars like the 150, 210, and Bel Air were born. Each one carefully built by thousands of skilled hands. At its peak, the plant produced more than 500 vehicles a day, shaping the roads of America with chrome, steel, and style. These weren't just cars. They were symbols of freedom, power, and pride. So let's step back in time and take a look inside the Chevrolet factory 60 years ago to see how legends like the 150, 210, and Bel Air were assembled piece by piece. The St. Louis Truck Assembly Plant was a city inside a city. Endless rows of steel beams, conveyor belts stretching as far as the eye could see, and workers marching in rhythm with the line. This was more than just production. It was choreography. Raw steel sheets arrived daily, carried by trucks, unloaded straight into the press shop. Here, giant stamping presses, some towering 2 stories high, thundered down with bone-shaking force. One press for the roof, another for the fender, another for the hood. Each blow shaped the soul of a Chevrolet. Side panels, doors, and floor pans were cut with surgical precision. Workers moved fast, guiding sheets into machines, checking edges, wiping grease from their hands. Sparks flew as steel sheets were transformed into pieces that would soon become part of America's best-selling cars. But stamping was only the beginning. Next came welding. Chevrolet's body shop was a place of fire and thunder. Sparks lit up the air as men with torches and spot welding guns joined panel to panel. Side panels were clamped into giant jigs, ensuring perfect alignment. Roofs were lowered into place, locked by dozens of welds. If one weld was off, a door might not close, or a roof might sag. Precision was everything. Around suspension mounts and engine compartments, welds were doubled for strength. The Bel Air, with its chrome fins and wide stance, demanded sturdiness beneath the beauty. Each seam was tapped, each joint inspected. Supervisors walked the lines, making sure no corner was cut. By the end of this stage, a car's body began to take shape. What had once been flat steel sheets was now unmistakably Chevrolet proud, bold, and unmistakably American. Before the body moved forward, human eyes and hands inspected every inch. Workers checked seams, tapped panels, and swung doors open and shut. Tight gaps were adjusted with hammers and clamps. Loose panels were re-welded on the spot. It wasn't just machines building these cars. It was pride. Every man and woman knew that one mistake could end up in a customer's driveway. The body had to be perfect before it moved on. Now comes one of the most magical stages of painting. The bare steel body was first dipped in giant tanks of anti-corrosion solution, protecting it from rust. From there, it rolled into paint booths, where men with spray guns worked with speed and skill. Unlike today's robots, every stroke was by hand. White coats, black fedoras, cigarettes tucked behind ears. This was 1950s craftsmanship. Bel Airs gleamed in two-tone finishes: turquoise with white roofs, red with ivory, black with silver. Paint drifted in the air, coating not just the cars but the men themselves. Few wore masks, few wore gloves, but the results spoke for themselves. By the end, each body shone under the factory lights, smooth, flawless, ready for chrome. Meanwhile, in another corner of the factory, the heart of the Chevrolet was being born. The Turbofire Vate, a 265 cubic inch powerhouse, was assembled by hand. Blocks were machined, pistons lowered, crankshafts fitted. Camshafts, lifters, pushrods, 14,000 individual parts came together to create one engine. Workers tightened bolts by hand, then checked with torque wrenches. Every valve was adjusted, every cylinder tested. Engines were fired up on test benches, roaring to life for the first time. Flames sometimes spit from exhausts. But this was music to the ears of those who built them. The smell of gasoline and oil filled the air. This was pure American horsepower. In car factories, one moment is legendary. They call it marriage. This was when the painted body was lowered onto the waiting chassis. The frame already fitted with suspension, axles, wheels, and that roaring Vate waited below. Slowly, carefully, the two halves became one. Engines, gearboxes, drive shafts, axles, and fuel tanks were not fitted separately. They were fitted all at once. In one moment, the Chevrolet became alive. Workers tightened bolts, connected fuel lines, and checked mounts. By the end, the car could roll under its own power. With body and chassis united, it was time to make the inside as beautiful as the outside. Seats were slid into rails. Some folded down to allow access to the engine tunnel. Chrome dashboards were fitted with speedometers, radios, and heater controls. Steering wheels gleamed in ivory plastic. Carpets were stretched. Headliners tacked into place. Door panels clipped on. Women made up about 10% of the workforce back then, many assigned to trim and upholstery. Their skilled hands stitched seats, aligned fabrics, and ensured every car left with style. The Bel Air especially was a feast for the eyes-patterned fabrics, polished chrome strips, two-tone interiors. It was a car designed to impress from every angle. Next came the sparkle. Windshields, rear windows, and side glass were fitted with rubber seals. Workers pressed them into place with mallets and cords. Chrome strips were aligned down fenders and doors, polished until they gleamed like jewelry. Wheels and tires were bolted on, steel wheels with bright hubcaps, lug nuts tightened by hand. Doors and hoods were aligned one last time, gaps checked to perfection. By now, the Chevrolet looked complete, but its journey wasn't over. Every finished car faced the trial of tests. First came the water test. Cars were rolled into booths where heavy showers rained down for minutes. Not a single drop was allowed inside. Then the rolling road test. Cars were strapped to dynos, engines revved, gears shifted, brakes slammed. Workers listened for rattles, vibrations, strange noises. Lights were checked, horns honked, wipers swiped. Every fluid was topped up. Only after passing these trials could a Chevrolet move on. Once approved, cars were sent to shipping yards. Some went by rail, loaded onto long trains stretching across America. Others were driven onto ships, bound for foreign markets. Cars were wrapped in wax paper, batteries disconnected, fluids drained for safety. In dealerships, they would be polished, perfumed, and placed proudly on display floors. Families would come in, fathers in hats, mothers in gloves, children wide-eyed. They weren't just buying cars, they were buying freedom. By the mid-1960s, Chevrolet was producing over 1.6 million cars a year. The Impala became the flagship, while the 150, 210, and Bel Air cemented themselves as icons. Workers went on strike, factories closed, models changed, but the memory of those days never faded. The Bel Air, with its tail fins and chrome, the 210, sturdy and stylish, the 150, simple but strong. They weren't just cars, they were symbols. Today, collectors polish them with love, drive them in parades, and keep the memory alive. Each bolt, each weld, each stitch carries the story of America's golden age. 60 years ago, Chevrolet wasn't just making cars. It was building dreams. From raw steel to polished chrome, from factory floor to suburban driveway, these cars carried America forward. The Chevrolet 150, 210, and Bel Air weren't just machines. They were memories of first drives, family trips,